Everyone, welcome back in. Betsperts Golf here for our first look at the Texas Children's Houston Open. Little Texas two-step before we head to the Masters. It is coming up. It is close. Final tests for these guys before we get ready for the major season. First big one on deck. Very, very entertaining Valspar Championship. Very tilting Victor Hovland win. He's repped on the wall behind me. I bet him all the time. The form run was so bad. I think we even talked about it a little bit. Like, it's just going to be some stuff that would fit him here, but the players posting 80s and such, like, really tough to confidently go back to Victor Hovland other than the numbers grab. So kudos to anyone out there who did. Painful, but great to see Victor back. I mean, it's another elite ball striker when he's in play. Like, he can go ahead and beat anybody in any field. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, he is such an enigma. I mean, just like you, when you see a number on him like that, like that's you just almost have to out of principle. But it's just, in a golfer's own words, when they tell you, golf is so volatile to begin with, but when they tell you they're not swinging it right and their swing is, disgusting, I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? And so, but when you look into the numbers, I mean, he hit some incredible approach shots, especially down the stretch. Like, he gained almost 8 strokes on approach. His putting has just improved. I mean, 12 strokes putting, I mean, that was pretty spectacular. So,
yeah.
It's just one of those weeks where, you kind of throw your hands up. And, I know another thing last week was, the weather edge, with the wind, and that did not play out as well. And I probably overemphasize that a little more than I should have, because the forecast just never ends up what they say it's going to be, and it's so unpredictable in Florida to begin with. So yeah, it's just one of those weeks where a combination of factors, and I had a couple guys in there. I had Bridgman, he just couldn't pull through, still looking for his first win. Billy Horschel, made a run there, but kudos to Victor, and we get ready here for the Masters 2 weeks away.
And a great lead-in event, and I think you're seeing some of that with the field too. Some more players coming here to Houston, which is a really entertaining track. I really enjoyed this event last year. They've made some pretty substantial changes, so I think that's an important topic for us to address off the top. Is that this used to be a swing season event. The move here to where it is in the schedule now changed a lot of agronomy stuff that really impacted how the course played, and I think you got to be really careful looking at some historical data at this event outside of last year. I'll let you kind of expand on that what happened last year, because again, we have basically, instead of Bermuda, we have, Poa Triv on the greens. We have some overseed in the fairways. They've cut the rough down. This is a bomber's paradise that has some of those, it's like similar shaved runoffs and some of the style that I think fits as a better Augusta tune-up than maybe the Valero will next week. And I think that's why you see someone like Rory adding this to his Masters tune-up. Scotty as well, obviously. So Rory and Scotty in the field, and then not a bad field behind it. So talk to us a little bit about the course, some of the agronomy changes, and what we need to be looking for.
So the first 3 years, this course played around even par in 2022 was around a half stroke under par. And then last year, with all the changes, we saw it drop down to about 3/4 of a stroke under par. So, yeah, I mean, overall, it does emphasize the importance of having a very well-rounded game. So, like you said, a lot of comparisons you'll hear about to Augusta this week. But the tournament moving from the fall to the spring for last year's event. So the agronomy kind of has allowed the course to play a little bit less challenging. So, wall-to-wall Bermuda we had in the fall. We now have overseeded Poa Trivialis on the greens. The biggest change, though, is the switch from, very penal 2.5-inch Bermuda rough to a very much, much easier, shorter ryegrass overseed, almost trying to, replicate, that first cut at Augusta. You basically have, 1.25 inches, which is basically nothing. And so, yeah, Memorial Park, like those first 3 years, it was one of the toughest non-major tee to green courses on tour. And so last year kind of showed, and again, this is not an easy course. I would still probably classify this in the, average to difficult section for sure. But yeah, the change in the season and then the agronomy change, you're just able to be so much more aggressive coming out of the rough. You're not worried about flyers or, bad
Yeah.
lies, from the unpredictable Bermuda rough. And yeah, and then just really quick here also, it's a par 70. So we have 5 par 3s and 3 par 5s. 5 of the 10 par 4s are over 490 yards. So just looking at, the second longest course, on the PGA Tour here. So like you said, this is pretty much, we say this for a few times a year, but a bomber's paradise for sure. Like when you look at some of the winners here, obviously Jaeger bombs it, won last year. Tony Finau's always up there. Even Carlos Ortiz is, when he won the initial year, pretty long off the tee. And then the contenders like Scheffler, Dustin Johnson, Thomas Dietrich, Toasty was second here last year.
Hmm.
And then I also like to look at, who has played this, who comes here every year. And so there's a subset of guys, and they're all just bombers off the tee who love to come here. We're talking about Taylor Pendrith, Wyndham Clark, Jason Day, Keith Mitchell, even a guy like Luke List. So, players who crush the ball off the tee, especially with the rough being shorter. I mean, there's only, 2 water hazards. There's only 21 bunkers. So, I think it is a really good comparison, not maybe to the difficulty, but even around the green where you have these short collection areas where, players are going to be challenged. And so definitely a good prep, I think, especially for Rory, for Augusta.
Interesting, fun finishing stretch as well, where there's some risk reward holes. There's that par 3 that could play super short. They'll put the pin right in the front. It's got a false front, like that killed Scotty last year, I think on Saturday. Makes for some pretty entertaining golf. You can go over to Betsperts Golf and look at our course stats sheet to get more of sense to expand on what Ron was just touching on there. You can see again a long par 70 with the unique layout, just the 3 par 5s. Long par 4s and long par 3s. So, for the most part, there's like last week we had a mix where it's like, yes, not necessarily a long course. You had the long par 3s, but some of those par 4s are shorter. You don't have that here. These are longer par 4s that are testing you out, and you can see Poetry on the greens. See those driver heavy layout here, easy to gain off the tee, which is obviously different than, what we would see maybe at Augusta or something like that. But again, an interesting test when you look at the overall scoring. You're seeing, last year was 12 was good enough for Jaeger to win. A bunch of guys bunched up at 11. You can see here too on the whole stats who want to get the, birdie rates. See, not a lot of birdies out there that are laying out there easy for you. Got to take advantage of that par 5 third hole. But otherwise, this is a lot of bogey holes. There's some, this is a opener is real tough. That's a 522 yard par 4 with a bogey rate of almost 30%. Like, welcome to Houston. Let's get started. So you can go through that if you'd like, but you can get into the course metrics. You can see some of the stuff that we're talking about here off the tee. And again, this is what I'm touching on. When you're looking at this, be very careful about expanding back too far because it is very much a different set of circumstances with what we saw in the 2024 version versus previous years. So you see the driving distances out significantly, driver usage up even. Again, because as Ron said, that rough penalty is significantly mitigated because they cut that stuff down. So you're definitely going to be able to play from the rough, and you need to be able to get it out there. You see that driver 320 plus yards massively expanded over previous years because there's just far less penalty from gripping and ripping off the tee. And, guys don't really care. You can see a low, accuracy rate. And get into some of the approach stuff. Let's see greens and rag. Pretty much in line, a little bit below a tour average event from the fairway even too. You can see that's a little bit smaller. Part of that is from where you're playing from. It's a little bit harder to hold when you're a little bit further out. You can go through that if you'd like as well, but you can see that through here, the approach shot distribution. The average here last year, 175.8 yards, solid 8.5 yards above a tour average event. You can see fewer of those wedges, with the scoring wedges. You're getting more into the longer stuff when you get into the, 175, 200 plus. That's right around where you see tour average. But when you start to creep up into this 200 plus, you see 28.5% last year. And you kind of creep out a little bit longer into, total from 200 to 225, that's jumping up. So definitely an interesting way to kind of look at things this week when you're looking at proximity buckets and how to look at approach. Anything you want to add there?
Yeah. So one thing is, the first 3 years, the greens were extremely firm here, very bouncy. And last year, switched to Poetry, switched to in the spring. So obviously you're going to have a lot basically more soft conditions. Even this year, I know they're supposed to be getting some rain coming up here, and they've had some already this year a lot. So it's not going to be as tough from an approach standpoint. We've kind of seen approach get easier, looking at last year compared to the first three. So, what was once an extremely tough ball striking course has kind of flipped. It's still very difficult around the greens. Putting, we'll get into here, but yeah, putting is a challenge, especially from, three putting. I know on these huge greens, there's some tiers, some quadrants that you want to stay out of. So, for me, it's definitely a week to look at. Bombers off the tee combined with short game.
Yeah, it's yeah, and I like it. I think it's a good aesthetically pleasing watch heading into it too. And I like that we got a nice little field. You can kind of go in here, look at the opening odds here from our friends over at FanDuel. Again, shot these odds on a Monday morning, but you can see Scotty here very, very much in the mix last year. I had a putt on the 72nd hole to force a playoff that he missed. Again, coming in last year on an absolute heater on the back of API and the back of the Players, rolling into Augusta, almost made this basically like 4 straight wins, very much in the mix there. Last year, Rory teeing it up here this year. He's 7-1 here. And when this happens, when we have Scotty Rory, you see what it does to the rest of the board. Pretty massive gap between everyone else here. You could see a couple of non-bombers, so maybe some fairway finders with Aaron Ryan, JJ Spawn right behind them. Davis Thompson as well. You see Jason Day, Sanjay Finau. Again, one here in the past is, a guy who comes here all the time. You get some of the more of the bombers. Wyndham Clark here too. Michael Kim, obviously continuing his weekly grind to get himself a ticket to the Masters and beyond. Siwoo, Minwoo, Pendrith, Jaeger, again, your defending champ at 45. And you get a nice little tier here at 50. So you can go down here and find, again, like if you have each way options, let's look at some of the bombers this week. It is definitely a spot where I want to see maybe a guy that I'm not always considering have the ability to stay in play this week because of the advantage with length off the tee, shortening some of those second shots. So again, make sure you're shopping around. I've not placed a bet yet. Not quite sure how to approach this week, but I have a couple guys in mind. Have not built a model yet either. But let's get into some of that here, Ron. Let's look at some of the ways to look at Memorial Park and the way we need to kind of model this. If you have any kind of overarching thoughts on how you want to approach it this week.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to the long course view. So, we have obviously by course length. So looking at very long courses, I think that's important this week. And even if you want to combine a little bit, elimination of the easy courses. And, I know we like to do that sometimes looking at, average and difficult. So, that's kind of my first view. I'll probably take it separately this week instead of combining them. It's not a, we've obviously seen this course play a little bit easier. So, definitely eliminate the easy ones and then look at course length here, I think is important.
Yeah, let's look at the long courses here. You said you want to include average? You think it's a good way to do it?
No, for this one, I'll just go long. I'll include average for scoring conditions.
Okay. We'll go long and very long to start. Yeah, that makes sense. We'll back out a little bit longer. You can see here our time frame here. We'll just look at the last year, get a sense of who's playing well. And again, I think this is a great way to look at approach as well. Again, you can get into the proximity buckets. This would be a little bit tougher because I think you're going to have such a interesting distribution in terms of fairway and rough, because we saw how low the fairway hit rate is because guys just don't really care with this shorter rough, shorter first tier. So you can see here, getting a decent sample, your best players last calendar year, and these guys can use Scotty and Rory in the field. They're not playing some of the courses that Matty Schmidt and Jonathan Vegas are, but you get a sense of who plays best in these longer conditions. This is why you can model it differently. You can go into scoring conditions difficult, and then you're going to see how these guys can separate. But Scotty, Rory, Vegas, Schmidt, Taylor Moore, Bridgman, Chan Kim, Dietrich, Finau, Mitchell. So some names that Ron referenced, guys that come here often, guys who've had solid finishes here. If Finau could have made a putt last year, he wins. He putted horribly last year and still, I think, finished a shot behind Jaeger. So he's played well here in the past. Dietrich was very, very much on the first page of the leaderboard last year. Same thing with Taylor Moore. I think Matty Schmidt was decent here last year as well. So looking at long courses is a great way to look at it. You can also just, I think sometimes long and very long golf courses, I want to look at ball striking, maybe tee to green, because that's really what I'm trying to capture with that too. A name like Kurt Kitayama will pop up, who's just going to continue to model well, but is struggling sometimes here. Hendrik Norlander, not a name I would expect to pop up here in ball striking on long golf courses. Alex Smalley, Gary Woodland, and then you see JJ Spawn, obviously with some nice recent form from the players, probably helping him out quite a bit there. So that is your top of the board from a ball striking long golf course standpoint. Let's look at the scoring conditions and do it as Ron said there too. We'll eliminate the easy scoring conditions and look at some of the difficult ones. This is, again, this is where you can kind of capture some of the stuff where, the Matty Schmidts and Vegases aren't, getting rewarded. Again, Scotty, Rory are going to be, look, it just be flat out. Sometimes people can overfit. We love when people share models. Share your model. It's great. If you're making a model this week and you somehow have someone other than Scotty or Rory 1 and 2, don't share it. Don't let anyone see it. Go back. You did something wrong. Reach out to us. We'll help you. Again, you don't necessarily always need to make that the case. You don't need to be building a model that replicates the odds board. But if you're building a model that doesn't have Scotty, Rory 1 and 2 in some order, can it be any order? You probably overfit some stats. Right? It's just, let's not get too cute. It should start Rory, Scotty in some order and then go from there. There's Bridgman again. Ron was on that last week. Michael Kim, Andrew Novak, Keith Mitchell, Tony Finau, Seamus Power had a nice little weekend, popped himself in there. There's Dietrich again, Siwoo, and Bahama Breeze's Danny Walker. So good for Danny Walker. He's spinning Bahama Ritas and Pina Coladas, and now he's cashing PGA Tour checks. So that's pretty cool. Anyone jump out there? Anything else you want to capture or share here, Ron?
Yeah, it's just such a unique week. I don't even know if I can remember a week like this where you have the top 2 players in the world, and you have some pretty good players below them, but like you said, that gap, like there's such a gap this week, and like that's the conundrum. Obviously, I don't think you can bet Scotty at 3-1 or something like that. I think he's still looking for the form he needs for Augusta, and Rory's been the best player in the world. Like, let's face it, like he's looked so good, but do you jump on him at 7-1? So I think that's the challenge this week, is kind of figuring out how to play the gap and where to go below them. And there's some good value there. Bridgman, like we see popping, even a guy like Max Gracerman, I think is a great fit this week with his putting and his off the tee game. So, I haven't seen him, much yet on here, but definitely named Davis Thompson again. I really love him this week. I think he really fits this course well too. So,
yeah.
And then you got, Thigallison down there, the Houston native. He's played this course pretty well. I don't think he's popped for a top 10 yet. I think he's kind of been in that top 20 range, but a lot of interesting names this week to kind of sift through.
Yeah, it is a tough week when I think there is, like you said, such a clear tier, and it's a harder price to get to for most, depending on your style of betting outrights. Those are expensive tickets, or you're choosing to bring home a lot less if you happen to cash the right one of two, if they happen to do that there this week. So it gets a little bit trickier. What else do we want to look at here?
Yeah, I think off the tee, carry distance is going to be something I'm factoring in a lot this week, especially with a soft course. You want guys that can get it out far and definitely driver heavy.
Yeah.
And we have the missed fairway penalty is going to be low, rough penalties low. So, those kind of all work together, because you're going to technically you're going to be driver heavy when you can just bomb it away, when you're not worrying about, any kind of issues with your second shot. So, I think, a combination of those, looking at those individually, you can get really creative off the tee this week.
I like it. Yeah, I'm always really trying to figure out the best way, because when you're looking at off the tee club, driver heavy, obviously you can look off the tee, strokes gained off the tee. I think looking at strokes gained ball striking, I think still matters. Obviously, it just doesn't really impact how the approach is hit. But I think in terms of stylistically, in terms of your strategy, it does impact the ball striking numbers. So I think that's an interesting way to go about it. 2 off the tee, driver heavy, last calendar year, Minwoo Lee, Rory, Hoey, Toasty, Kitayama, Pike Gatter, which, that makes sense. He's buried down the odds board, real small sample, but obviously, the ability for him to take the club head cover off without any penalty over and over again this week could be pretty nice. You see some other guys from Mexico, Salinda popping up here, who's played some pretty good golf of late. Vegas, you, and then Scotty. And then some other names, closer to the top or mid of the odds board here with Pendrith, Finau, and Davis Thompson right behind them. When you look at ball striking through this lens of driver heavy, Scotty, Vegas, Doug Gim, Kitayama, Finau, Rory, Norlander again. Nicola Højgaard, who just absolutely folded on himself on Friday, missed the cut. Kevin Yu, Keith Mitchell, and Gary Woodland right here as well. So, yeah, definitely a way to go about it. You can add the other ones, as Ron said. Start to maybe overfit. I want to mess with the sample a little bit, but it does kind of go hand in hand in terms of missed fairway penalty, rough penalty, when you're looking to go off the tee, driver heavy as well. So, some different ways to go about that if you'd like.
Yeah, and like what you said, for me this week, I've kind of liked looking at strokes gained total, like driver heavy, because like you said, this course is easy to gain off the tee, so everyone's going to gain to an extent off the tee. So it's kind of like who can separate and put themselves in position for their next shot. And certain guys just tend to play better, when they can just bang out driver every single, most of these par fours and par fives. And so, there's, like you said, different ways to look at it.
Yep.
But I like looking at the total view as well and seeing, okay, just overall driver heavy, who plays the best.
Yep. No surprise, Scotty, Rory. There's Davis Thompson, Sanjay, Mav, Harry Hall, Pendrith, Rye, Dietrich, Ben Griffin. And you can see some solid putting numbers across the board for those guys. Total, I like tee to green in that sense too. Again, we're just taking out the putting element, which again is why you're going to have a Finau and Kurt Kitayama near the top. Doug Gim benefits from removing total as well because putting numbers are pretty atrocious. There's Vegas, Siwoo, Keith Mitchell again, and Michael Kim, who's not been putting particularly well as of late. So, yeah, interesting way to look at it, but definitely a way that you need to look through the lens of something that's driver heavy this week, because it's definitely that leaderboard that you looked at last year is very unique, and pretty much everyone gets it out there pretty significantly. So. How about we touched on around the green mattering a little bit. Again, you're going to have, higher, we saw, I guess, a lower greens and reg rate. We have these shaved runoffs. How you want to tackle around the green? What's a way for you to look at that this week?
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking at, so we have the rough, very short around the green. That's not coming into play much. It's really the collection areas that are, the shaved, very short, trying to replicate, and I know they're trying to give these guys, a good practice run here for Augusta. So, you can do it lane short, but you could also, if you scroll down and go, I love going, looking at also scrambling on short grass when it's, difficult, because this is kind of one of the things this course is known for. And so I'll definitely factor that in pretty heavily this week.
Yeah, let's see. What's gaining around the green here is difficult. Yeah, so strokes gaining around the green difficult too. So that's another way you can go into here and look at gaining around the green being on the difficult side. Scrambling short grass difficult. Again, the scrambling stuff. I like the gaining around the green being difficult, because scrambling, again, we're touching on, we're bringing in some putting elements to it too. But again, lots of different ways to look at it. It all kind of matters here a little bit too. But I'm gonna leave this here. I got short, rough, and I'm going gaining around the green. Difficult, very difficult, and average. I just want to take out the easier stuff here and just see what happens with this. So again, I'm not saying this is the right way to do it. This is a way that I would probably lean to do it. Again, I have not built my Houston model quite yet, so we're gonna go with a little bit of a larger sample. This gets a little trickier because, again, around the green in general is a little bit noisy. We're adding some filters to make it even of a smaller sample, but let's get a sense of, around the green play in this format. Scotty, Harris English, Aaron Badley, Vincent Whaley, Grayson Sigg, Matt Hughes, Jason Day, Taylor Montgomery, Eric Cole, Bull Hostler are your top. Davis Thompson not far behind here. Let's see some other names that pop out. There's Sanjay. You see, we can get some more of the specific around the green stuff here. If we go into the around the green view, it might help. So again, this could be overfitting. I'm just trying to look at this, live and thinking about how I'm really trying to capture this. If you want to get a sense of scrambling in this subset on short grass, small sample. Yeah, so again, we're not seeing a lot of Brandt Snedeker these days, but he's here. There's Matty Schmidt. There's Thigala. Davis Thompson again. So that bodes well for him near the top of the odds board. Jason Day, Scotty, Rory. Interesting. Gary Woodland. So again, Finau's here. It's not bad for Finau. Better scrambling on the short grass than on the thick rough. So this is where I think you really like to get a sense of who's playing well in this type of setting comparatively to their baseline. Jason Day better on the short stuff, Thigala better on the short stuff. So I think that matters. It's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, and again, like you said, there's so many options here. Like you could just look at around the green difficult, and you could look at arc proximity, which is a stat I've kind of fallen in love with as far as who can chip their ball closest to the hole. And so, yeah, a lot of ways to get creative here for sure.
Yeah, I like around the green proximity too. Yeah, because again, the scrambling stuff, for folks reminder, scrambling, it does have an element of putting to it too. So again, we try to isolate putting as much as possible, look at that through a different lens, right? Looking at baseline putting performances, looking at putting on Poa Triv. What we're really trying to do here is look at around the green play, because it is, I think, a little bit more impactful than a normal week. I really want to try to isolate the around the green play and not bring in the putting element to it, because I don't know what those putting splits are. Those could be irrelevant putting splits based off of the putting surface that they're on. So definitely an interesting way to go about it this week. What else are we missing? Anything else? What do you approach wise? We kind of skipped over approach, but anything before we wrap up approach wise or putting or scoring? Anything else?
Yeah, putting, I'm definitely looking at 3-putt avoidance. I think that's pretty big this week. You have large greens. They do run somewhat fast in the kind of 12.5 to 13 range on the stent meter. And so I think 3-putt avoidance, looking at 3-putt avoidance from 25 plus feet, because that's, a lot of approaches are gonna, have some far proximity this week. So yeah, this is one. I think, being able to lag putt is very crucial this week.
Yep. You got approach putting there next to it as well. Yeah, but you're good lag putters from 25. Koala Carl Phillips, the top. Vince Whaley, Griot, good for Griot. Cummins, Perez, Jay Day, Harry Higgs, Nick Hardy, Thornberry, Badley. So not a bunch of guys we're necessarily considering, but you get a lot of 6 sub 7K DFS looks probably for these guys. Michael Kim is in this bucket. Nikolai Højgaard, Sanjay, Dunlap. It's not a bad mix. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting way to look at it. You can add and go in here and add large greens if you want to look at putting on, large greens as well. Is a different way to look at 3-putt avoidance. Again, it's the rabbit hole. So many different ways to kind of land on a similar story. It's why it's obviously an interesting process every week. Approach putting, some of the same stuff too. I mean, Finau being a good lag putter, approach by putting himself in range to score is happening. Making them and converting at a higher rate is not happening. But that's does coincide a little bit with some previous success here, which I think is interesting too.
And this is one where I'd back out a little bit more just to get, because I think lag putting is kind of a skill that you get over time. And so, I think looking at the 3-putt avoidance and then from 25 feet and then approach putt, I think looking at all 3 of those together and kind of saying, okay, who is consistent across the board? You can see Jason Day is just, super consistent. He's played well here. Novak has really improved with his putting. And so I think that's a good way to look at, just taking out some of the noise. Okay, this guy pops into one, but not the other. Just see who's consistent across the board.
Yep. And you can go in and add, putting on Poa Triv if you want as well. That matters. And I think you can look at that too. But yeah, I think, trying to go down and see where there's some all greens across the board is probably a nice little mix, especially if it coincides with some nice recent form iron wise, and then some distance off the tee, which matters too. So, but you can look at that too. Let's just look back out, go off the tee before we close, just get a sense of who is getting it out there. Would you say it's a carry distance week, Ron, or would you say that it's a just a distance overall? Some run out?
Yeah, I think with the soft course, especially in the springtime, I think for me, carry distance is going to be something important this week. Of course, they both go hand in hand, but just to see who gets that little bit of an edge, a little bit more length.
Yep, no surprise at the top. Pot Geeter, Rory, Minwoo, Thor Bjornsson, Rasmus Højgaard, Pendrith, Jesper Svensson cooks it out there. Keith Mitchell, Kitayama, Wyndham Clark, and you see some other names not surprising below. Woodland, the other Højgaard, Mullinex, Matty Schmidt. again, you're a defending champ. Steven Yeager gets it out there. And you don't think of Finau and Scotty as short off the tee. You start to get them down here in terms of, upper 20s, mid 30s in rank. This is why it's important to go through and look at the average, because it's probably very minimal when you look at the actual distance. So it doesn't seem to affect Scotty at any place he tees it up. He's not lacking in distance.
Yeah, Minwoo is the name this week. To keep an eye on. I think he's really close to getting over the hump. But can he put it together for all 4 rounds? He's got the perfect fit for this course for sure.
Yeah. The around the green magic is a little bit popping there too, as we see at times. So again, going into any of these stats, you can capture them versus the average versus the rank. Always recommended to get a sense of where there's a real teardrop with any of these guys. So all right, question in the chat. I'm seeing a ton of correlation to success with many putting stats. What is the max you would weigh different putting stats in an overall model this week, Ron?
So it's different for each week. A course like this, I do think short game matters. I think for me, this is more of a spike putting week. So, you've seen Tony Finau, not a good putter, success here. So even a guy like Yeager, not known to be, but he had a great spike putting week last week. So, we do have the floor ceiling filter is great to look at. Okay, who pops, maybe not your typical guy, but, who could go off this week. So, but to answer the question, overall in any model, I typically never, if I'm looking at putting altogether, usually not weighing it more than 15% overall. I like to keep it kind of in that 10 to 15% range, maybe a little more or less, depending on, what the data shows. But for the most part, the data shows this is a spike putting week. So I'm kind of emphasizing around the green a lot more than I am putting this week.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I probably would lean to the closer to the 10% cap, but I think 10 to 15, depending on the week. Again, I wouldn't make a blank statement with it. But using this tool, I think, is a great way to show it. You can see here, for instance, I'm just sorting by gaining 2 or more strokes putting over the last calendar year. You could see we don't have a huge sample for Jesper Svensson, for instance, but if you're just to say gaining strokes putting, he's 47.22%. It's red. It's not great. But if I'm searching by gaining 2 or more, he's 5th in the entire field at 22%. So when he has a good week putting, he's posting some big time numbers. So, obviously trying to capture where and when that happens is a little bit trickier, but you want to see it. You want to see that there's some upside, that, when you're rolling it well, you can actually really start to separate yourself and really start to compete. So not a ability to add this to a model, but I think it's a nice little way to kind of go through and see. Again, you could put any split on this as well. If you want to look at large greens this way, if you wanted to look at, Poet Triv greens, you can filter by any condition here as well. So, and again, obviously you could do this for any of the strokes gain metrics, but just looking at the putting, Ron makes a good point. I mean, you really want to be able to have that week where you could separate. Thomas Dietrich has that here. It played well here in the past before too. You could see Gracerman, as Ron shouted out earlier, Jason Day, those guys just have a really high putting baseline. You can really put up some really hot numbers on the green. So great resource. Absolutely love floor ceiling model. Oh, but anything else before closing? I know we got a house full of spring breakers, probably, trying to break the door down now.
Yeah, they're all quiet for the most part, but yeah, no, I think this is a great week to model. I think this is one of those weeks, so it's kind of easy to handicap because you have a subset of golfers that have shown they play this course well, and so I think targeting those guys, whether it's for DFS or your bets this week, bombers off the tee who kind of have a really good short game. I think that's what we're looking for.
Yep, love it. It's going to be a fun week. We're getting close. I made some Masters bets already. We're getting there. Shop around. Pretty much everyone has Masters numbers out there right now. So if you're starting to look, get a sense of some stuff here. I mean, I'm fascinated by if we had a Rory win this week, or Rory really in contention and almost wins. What happens to Rory's Masters number? It's obviously a place that he's looking to kind of get over the hump. But that number might get significantly shorter, especially if Scotty is again kind of maybe 20 or so. That those two kind of coalescing in the middle at some point might happen, which is kind of wild to think about. So, All right, subscribe before you take off here. Betsperts Golf on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Take advantage of, go to any of our socials, Ryan Noonan on Twitter, PGA Splits 101. We got discount codes all over. If you want to check it out for for a month, get yourself the next 2 Texas events, do the Masters, get Harbortown. Just get a sense. Come over and model, build around, and play. Let us know if you have any questions. Jump in the Discord where all of our official picks are. Also have a great Discord community. I'm sad for them. TGL championship tonight, the finals. Our group has been loving betting on TGL. I know it's had a ton of success. So I'll look for that too in Discord today. And again, obviously follow PGA Splits 101 on Twitter if you want to get all the great stuff that Ron is doing from a content standpoint. So come back tomorrow, betting show.